And that's why I just stick this.
Okay. I'm calling the meeting back to order. And we are moving on to Planning Manager Garrett Jackson. The drama llama himself over here. Just kidding. He's wearing a llama sweater, everybody. I don't know. Can you show the camera your I feel like it's important for this topic. Thank you. I know it's not germane, but it's important.
Order llama or alpaca?
Is it? Ooh,
Or
that's a good question. Okay, wait. Germane. Mr. Jackson is here to present. Paulus is here to present on item A9, which has nothing to do with Christmas carols, but it is a proposed public hearing on ordinance to amend Bremerton Municipal Code Title 20 to achieve permit procedures compliant with SB 5290. Was this discussed at any committees? The Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommendation obviously was to proceed with this. So let's proceed with your presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
And to you, sir.
We start with that Planning Commission recommendation. Planning Commission unanimously recommends adoption of the proposed zoning code amendments. Council should hold an open record public hearing, consider testimony, and adopt the proposed code change. Ready to go through just the process with the public at the public hearing. We had a workshop with the Planning Commission in October. Did review with the Department of Commerce and secret review in November, and then a public hearing with the Planning Commission also in November. The findings and conclusions from the Planning Commission are in the packet, including the 3 comments that we received related to these code changes. One was unrelated to this topic. One was a comment from the KBA, which supported these proposed amendments with the caveat that they hope that DCD will be looking into potential expedited review or third-party review in the future. And then another comment that was related to potential changes to our manufactured home park requirements. We are here tonight at the study session before the regular meeting next week. And this is, these zoning code amendments are brought to you via the state of Washington. The Local Project Review Act is how the state regulates local project review. And that was recently changed with SB 5290 with the hope that local processes will become more efficient. And that takes effect in January 2025. It's also, the state requires efficient and fair permitting to the Growth Management Act. It's one of 15 GMA goals of the state of Washington. We're also directed by PSRC Vision 2050 to have streamlined development review and permitting processes. And our own comprehensive plan calls out in our housing element and economic development element provisions for efficient permit review. Our permit processing changes we can best categorize into 3 separate categories. 1, permit process updates. 2, increased permit efficiency. And 3, some additional measures in housekeeping. So 5290 required us to change our land use permit times. Currently, we have 120 days to process those permits. That would change with 5290 to 65 days for permits that don't require public notice, 100 days for permits that do require public notice, and 170 days for permits that require a public notice and public hearing. So this does not include building permits, fire department permits, or other permits where coordination for cultural resources is required. Now, cultural resources are an issue for our tribal partners. Some properties contain culturally significant items potentially, which requires additional archaeological studies at times, and that can slow up permits and coordination with tribal entities. So it's the reason for the exemption there. Increased permit efficiency. So SB 5290 requires jurisdictions to issue refunds for permits that don't meet the prescribed timelines, unless we choose from a menu of items to introduce permit efficiencies into our system. So not wanting to issue refunds due to budget constraints, and also that is a whole nother level of red tape that would likely slow down the permitting process. We have these 10 available items to choose from. The 3 bolded items were selected and recommended by the Planning Commission. And these other items I'll go through shortly here. So expedited review process. That's not recommended for selection, as if we codify expedited timelines and process, that could put us in a tight position. So we have staff that ebb and flow here at the city of Bremerton. And if we hired a consultant to have an expedited process, they also have staffing changes, and it would be hard to commit to a number of days that you could provide for an expedited review process. That being said, you can look into administratively having an expedited review process rather than a codified one. Reasonable fees. Spoken with a number of jurisdictions about this, and reasonable can be subjective and is open to legal challenge. So while there are jurisdictions taking a stab at reasonable fees, we feel like that would be another red tape exercise that took time away from permitting that could also lead to legal challenges. Interlocal agreement. We could have an interlocal agreement with other jurisdictions to help with permit review. That being said, interlocal agreements sometimes take a very long time, even years, to come to a conclusion. And then you need to train that staff and then overview that work. And it looks like it would not be an efficient use of time. On-call permit assistance and new budgeted positions. Both of these items and others to some degree were not considered, as we're in a tight budget situation already, and adding services that will cost us money was not really an option. Self-certification. So can we find ways where licensed professionals in the private sector can put a stamp of approval on a plan and submit it to the city and not have anyone review it?
No.
It may be some time before we find the best practices that would fit with the city for self-certification that didn't require review, but because that can be kind of an ominous subject, that was not considered very much. And applicant meeting. This is a nice option where after sending a review letter for 3 review letters, before you can cancel an applicant's permit, you need to meet with the applicant in person and then go over any potential changes with them. But there's a caveat to that if you choose this option, then you must also not have any fee associated with appeals. So we feel that that would lead to frivolous appeals rather than have any fee, which would slow down the permitting process. So moving into those bolded options, optional pre-submittal application process. So for anyone at the table that's unfamiliar, if you have a project in mind, you can pay the city $100 and meet with the fire department, building, public works, planning, and we can invite others to attend. Sometimes we invite the public health district, the tribe, state agencies, all to participate for $100 to give you feedback on your preliminary idea. Right now, it is required for certain permits. If we make it optional, we can have one of those, one of the 3 answered. So that's pretty simple. The second is to only require a public hearing when it's required by state statute. So these are the affected code sections here where we potentially require a public hearing and it is not required by state statute. I'm happy to explain any of these specific permits if you have questions. The majority of these have an option written into the code where it says if the director chooses to elevate these options to a hearings examiner level permit, then she has the option to do so. Once again, I'm happy to read through this list if anyone's interested. Pausing. Okay.
Sorry. Affordable housing bonus?
Affordable housing bonus, we added to the code, I believe, 2 years ago, and it's for the Bremerton Housing Authority that have a 50% density increase if housing in its entirety, all the housing that's provided is affordable. We have not had a permit submitted for that code section.
And second and final question, the requirement for public comment would stay the same as it is?
Correct. These would
Thank you.
stay a type 2 permit required. A type 2 permit requires public notice. A type 3 permit requires public notice and a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Outright permitted housing uses. So right now there are 3 types of uses. Generally, outright permitted uses, conditional uses, prohibited uses. So this option would be that if there is a use for housing, that it be outright permitted and not conditional. So it's not saying that if a housing use is prohibited, that we allow that. It's only that we take any conditional use permits and make them outright permitted uses. So a conditional use permit lets you add conditions into a permit that are not necessarily in the code. And it also requires public notice. So these 4 housing types are currently conditional use permits: cottage housing, group residential, senior housing complex, and manufactured home park. We have never received a conditional use permit for cottage housing, senior housing, or a manufactured home park. So we see that as being a very minor impact. Group residential, I believe since I've been here, maybe we had 5 or 6 permits that are conditional use permits over the last 10 plus years that I've been here.
Can I ask you a question on these?
Please.
How come the parking requirements are so different? Like cottage housing, they require 1.5. Senior housing, they require 1. A lot of seniors still have a partner, so they could probably have 2 cars, hopefully 1. Cottage housing is small housing. Why isn't that just 1 vehicle?
And that's a great question for 2 reasons. One is scope for what we're proposing, and 2 is what's coming in the future. So 1, scope, we're just trying to meet these 5290 requirements.
Okay.
So all of these cottage, group, senior, manufactured home park, they all have criteria for approval grade.
Right.
We're planning on keeping that criteria of approval, but not making it a conditional use permit. So you still need to meet the criteria, but it's not a conditional use permit. Does that make sense?
Yes, but is there still time to change what that criteria is?
There will, it's not recommended for the scope of this permit. We will be coming back to council specifically for parking. We'll be doing a
Okay.
big overview of our parking standards, including all of these items.
Okay.
But generally, if there's less than 2 parking spaces required per residential unit, it's either a type of housing that we're trying to promote for affordable housing, or it's associated with a population that typically has less cars.
Okay.
Sorry, Michelle.
You're not.
Not to me. Definitely.
It was
So-
a perfect volume.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, well, these are just some examples of those housing types. Manufactured home parks, we have one at the southern end of Kitsap Lake on Price Road. A senior housing complex, we have Vintage out on Sheridan. Group residential facility, we have one on Harbor on 5th Street, south of Kitsap Way in West Bremerton. And then we also have an example for cottage housing of Snyder. Doesn't mean that these have been reviewed under these code sections. They're just examples of the city that most resemble those housing types. And the additional housekeeping measures that I was referencing. First of all, design review. We're recommending, or excuse me, the planning commission is recommending that the building permit from a design review permit not be a type 2, that it transition to a type 1. So currently, the design review process requires a public meeting or a conceptual meeting, and then another public meeting, all with public notice for the response conference. And then the building permit also has public notice and an option to appeal. So this is a lot of process and time for a development to go through without any certainty that they will be able to develop at the end of their project when they're submitting a building permit. For that reason, the building permit submittal is recommended to go from a type 2 permit to a type 1 permit.
Only within the downtown and Harrison Heights.
Those are the only places that have the design. Correct.
Where is the design review board? I looked on the city's website and I couldn't find that we actually have a design review board.
I will look at that.
I Googled
You know, we
too.
have a- It's a group that we have.
Do they have
I'll look
regular
into it
meetings?
more. I wasn't ready for
'Cause-
that question.
Yeah,
Because I couldn't find anything either.
Okay, so you'll follow up and give us some information about the design.
Sure, I can
Thank you.
email everybody some information on the design.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course. Some additional measures, applicant response time. Right now, we
Can't find
allow
it either.
for the applicant to have 90 days to respond to a permit in any way. So with these new timelines, each time that we get revised materials, we need to review those, and it takes time. So that means that the total review time, say it's the 65 days, every time we get a revised application, we have less days and less days and less days to meet that time period. So we're proposing to have a 60-day time limitation in which you can respond back to the city. You send you a review letter, respond back to us within 60 days. Otherwise, we could lapse that permit. Also, that if we ask for the same item 3 times in a review letter and that's not provided, then it's proposed also to lapse that
Okay.
permit. Once again, our time constraints are getting much tighter. And every time we receive a review letter, we have less and less time left on that clock to issue a decision. So we feel like this is a reasonable change.
does your clock stop when you send a letter?
It does.
So if you have a 120-day permit, you send them letters and they don't get back, okay. So it stops every time.
Why do you send more than one request for additional permit information?
Well, I would think that that's helpful for people to, sometimes you lose an email.
It is very common that we send a review letter that has 3 items on it, and we will get a submission back that has 1 item.
Mm,
So we send another review letter that says, thank you for submitting item 1, please submit items 2 and 3. And then we'll get another submittal that may not have item 3. So it's typical.
And you don't conclude that people aren't too interested?
It does.
Sorry,
We're
Sorry.
understood.
Yeah, okay.
I can go back to that.
If anybody else on council wants to bring it up, otherwise let's keep going.
And then lastly, we had heard There was a new apartment project on Wheaton Way, that we got a lot of phone calls from, like, what are they building there?
Yeah,
And,
there's no sign.
because there's no sign.
Yep.
And council indicated to DCD, we would like a sign. And so we heard you. We have a proposal to have a sign. If you have a development proposal, then you would put an informational sign letting people know what your project details are and project contact information. This would not have a public comment period. It would be there for informational purposes so that people know when we get a permit in and we deem that permit complete, then you put up the sign. And when your project is final, you can then take that sign down.
Why is the city providing the sign? Why isn't the developer providing the sign?
It's a
like
way
in
to make
most
them
places?
uniform.
You can,
And the planning commission had some heartburn about this being a barrier to development. And
Oh
so
my
when
God.
we mentioned that we could provide the sign, that's what the city of Tacoma does, then they felt better about requiring the sign in general. So
Is it really a high price point for us to provide a sign?
that's subjective, but I would say no.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna jump in, actually. I was thinking,
Go ahead, Jack.
like the idea, of not only uniformity, but also then the city's making sure the information about the project is accurate
Correct and
and out
accurate.
there, and it's not left up to the individual, so
Well,
there'll be no hiding anything, the
we
city can make sure it's out there.
provide-
Go ahead, sorry, you go, yeah.
We want, it would be a blank sign with the notice on top, so that's the uniformity.
Oh,
That it would be, everyone would know that when you see this exact type format, then what the purpose of it is, and it would look different than, maybe I should provide what it would look like.
An example, you gonna mock that up for us?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. All right. This is
It
about
would
the
look
sign.
different than our land use signs that do require public notice, so that they're easy to differentiate from.
Okay,
But that's the idea. This would be required for all residential projects of 5 dwelling units or more, and any permit that requires CPAC.
thank you.
And
We can come back to this later. Council President.
We got one more slide.
So
The presentation is
reiteration
finished?
of the planning commission recommendation. Yep.
All right, counselors. Questions?
I go,
Anna, and then, or did you want to go first? You want Jane to go first? Jane and then Anna.
is all staff time working on permits in any way all covered by permit fees?
No, that'd be an enterprise fund, and DCD is not an enterprise fund.
So it seems like a lot of cities do recoup their costs on it.
That
Like-
might be more of
like-
a conversation for budget.
Okay, so like, for instance, the $100 preliminary
Oh, yeah, that's.
permit meeting, $100 doesn't even cover the cost of one employee to come to a meeting, let alone from 4 or 5 different departments. How do they charge their time? Is that,
It's at a low, I'd say it's like the chicken that they sell at Costco. Like, you can go there and they get you in the door with a low price chicken. And that's.
I
what we
like
do
this
to
analogy.
Encourage permit
No,
conformance.
except you have to be a member, otherwise you can't get into Costco.
You know what, but this is, but like our housing, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, the floor.
well, not every permit is housing.
Right.
Once again, I believe that that's more discussion for budget and for rate tables. But
Maybe a way
that's
to
the-
balance our
that's been
budget.
the idea behind it, is that we want people to come in for this early guidance rather than getting very far down the road,
Mhm.
designing a project that's not feasible. there's a lot to deal with between fire, public works, planning, and building.
Right.
Even if you're a seasoned professional. And this is more about cost, I understand.
So does the state set permit fees or do we set permit fees?
We set permit fees.
So permit fees could be increased or we could have an enterprise fund, do it that way.
Anna?
You're all done?
Yeah.
Okay. The state, hi Garrett, the state law that we're complying with is SB is 5290. Do I have that right? Does that it calls for increased permit efficiencies and something about community engagement as well? Am I correct on that?
There's some citation here.
I thought I saw it somewhere in this long thing, in one of the planning commission things. Oops. Hang on, please.
Sure.
Okay. I'm not going to find it, but it calls for something in addition to permit efficiencies. Can you recall what that is?
I know that in the planning commission packets, we're recommending this informational sign for additional outreach. But beyond that, the bill is more about increasing permit efficiencies through, and in some cases, through removing some public process, like a public hearing would be considered additional public process. So I don't know that there is anything about additional public process. I think that through permit efficiencies, removing some of that that's seen as extraneous.
Yeah. Well, I at my at the town hall just this past Monday, despite the fact that people thought that their public comments would have no effect whatsoever on the city, which I really didn't have hard evidence to contradict. So public comments apparently do not have, is that accurate? Like, unless public comments are finding inaccuracies, then public comments have no effect. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say so. Well, permit review is to ensure that decisions that were issued are consistent with the code and other state and federal laws. If there is some code on the book that says that we need to consider a certain type of public comment in order to approve a permit, then I guess we just look at the criteria for approval. And if a public comment isn't related to that permit criteria of approval, then we could deny a permit based off of public comment not related to that criteria.
Okay, and I'm assuming from the way you're talking that there are very, very few permits where public comment is relevant.
Well, you had a lot of neighbors from the main drive that were out at the meeting, and we've gotten a lot of comments from them. And I let them know that that public comment led to us doing additional outreach to the Suquamish Tribe, Department of Ecology, Department of Fish and Wildlife, to ensure and let them know that they're working in the community, and please take a look at this. Okay. So I'd say that is a way that public comment can have an effect to, it led to us doing additional outreach beyond what's required.
Okay. I don't know how many of you saw the email that I sent today. The electronic copy was truncated and really all the meat of it was deleted.
Oh, it's partially deleted?
Yeah, like 4/5 of it was deleted. Yeah. On the other hand, this printout is complete.
Okay, all right,
So
thank you
this
for that clarification. Let's take a look.
yeah, this is basically a reprise of my September 13th, 2023
Damn it.
presentation.
Copy.
which is like saying, let's mimic what City of Paulsville does. Hey, Garrett. Thank you. For you. You've seen almost all of it before, but it's just saying, let's mimic what City of Paulsville does, which is if somebody's applying for a permit to fix the cracks in their concrete steps or get a new water heater or
Get permits.
no, they don't need permits. Or to like put in new windows, right? That's not of public importance, right? It's of little or no public importance. But everything else in Paulsbo gets a standard, not filled out by the developer, but a regular notice of proposed land use action that we now only require for types 2 and 3. Most permits are type 1. I don't think it's a barrier to development to let the community have an opportunity to comment on the city that they live in, and to have an opportunity to shape the city that they live in. So I do sincerely appreciate DCD going into this informational signage, but I don't think that a developer filling out a sign with their impression of what they're doing would have as much merit for the community as DCD presenting what they, with their expertise and oversight, think that the developer is doing.
But that sign doesn't go up until after the permit's been issued.
It should go up when the permit is applied for. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we have recommended changes, I just want to clarify, sorry, and let me just clarify, do they have to go back to the planning commission for approval?
Something of that scope, I think it would, to say that
Okay.
anything more than a water heater, so that a new single family home would need a public notice, a public comment period. Public comment period, any permit that we do have a public comment period for, anyone that provides a comment then has appeal rights. So you could then appeal a single family home permit or wherever that yard mark might be. That might also be outside of the scope of what's proposed, but yeah,
Right.
your council deliberate.
Who actually has the floor right now?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I am obviously strongly in support of this. I think that we should be open and transparent with the community. And I think bringing it back to the planning commission, it's not that heavy a lift. But obviously that would only happen if the rest of council supported it. So I bring it up. I'll keep bringing it up, but I think doing so at 14-month intervals, not too bad.
Pace yourself.
I'm pacing myself.
all right, who's next?
Garrett.
Garrett, you're next, go for it.
Just pointing out that the intent behind these changes that are required by the state is to increase permit efficiency in order to add housing over time, make that process more streamlined. Just wanted to point out that those two proposals may conflict with one another.
And Anna, I don't think your email was cut off. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, I have the whole.
Really? Then my.
I think you
email
needed to
is
select
probably not.
see more.
This is what I have.
There's probably a see more option, the little dot, dot, dot. So, counselors, any other questions? Eric?
Comment on
Yeah.
optional pre-submittal
Oh,
content.
and now you hit see more.
To support what you guys are doing there, so it's optional. So if you have a seasoned veteran that
And
knows
that's
what
probably
they're
why you're
doing,
not seeing
they don't
Tom's.
have to wait for the schedule, I get it. But I do think the $100 nominal fee is appropriate, so you don't get people say, hey, I'd like to do this, let me run this by and waste all your time. So they get a little money in the game, but I don't find $100, that might save me a lot of time and effort if I can meet with all the department heads I need to meet with. So I think that's an excellent idea, optional, just the way you have it proposed. I kind of agree with Anna on this sign here where we just provide the heading. And I know I'm being theatric, but basically the developer could do five little picture houses with a little thing in or whatever, a little stick figure thing, it's whatever they want. Now, we just said earlier that it's absurd for self-certification. I think it's absurd to put the onus on the developer to say, hey, this is what I plan on doing. Oh, but just kind of, I'm not saying all developers are like this, but they want to get their project done. So they may not be fully disclosing exactly what this thing is. I prefer that DCD, you know what it is. Just describe it and put it on the sign. And I don't think that needs to go to the planning commission. I think you guys can change that in-house, put the onus on you to do that.
I think that that's reasonable. We do have a provision here that, written in, that it be installed for instructions provided by a city staff, so that we could control the type of information that's included in that notice in a standard handout. That being said, I'm not vehemently,
I'm not trying to micromanage you, but I think I have the support here. I think you guys need to do it.
So to be clear, like a piece of plywood, you guys will have some sort of basic information, and then the rest of the space they can use to put shiny pictures or stuffing on, right? Is that what you're?
There'd be a picture of the proposed development and then a page describing the plan.
And that's something you control.
Right, we would have.
And is there any space on them for them to add more stuff, or so this is really a standard thing? Okay.
Well, that's not what you were describing earlier. You said it was a blank thing with a header on it, and the developer put it on.
And if I mismanaged those, I apologize. What I mean is we're handing them a sign and then also instructions on what to put on there. So if that is, if this is.
So we're doing.
Oh, wait, where's the mock-up?
The city of Bremerton.
It's a corrugated piece of plywood. I mean, have you seen our land use signs
Yeah.
over the city?
Occasionally.
It would look very similar to.
That was actually funny, Anna. That was funny. That was funny. She said occasionally, seeing the signs, her earlier point. That was funny.
So our city logo would be on a blank piece of corrugated plywood. And the only oversight that our city would have would be, we hope you will follow these instructions.
No.
I am happy to, that was the idea, that we have this corrugated piece of plastic and that we have instructions on what to place on there. That's the idea at this point.
And if they don't follow it, there's repercussions.
Yeah, we would have them.
Well, you
remove
have
the
to
sign.
tell them where to put it, so they, like, there's an apartment building going in my district, right? The ground is covered with blackberries and all other invasives. If you don't tell them where they're gonna put it, they're gonna put it behind the blackberries, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in the rest of in many parts of the world, there's a standardized sign. You give them the verbiage that they have to put on it, and they pay to go to the print shop to have that done. Then they can add a picture if they want. I haven't really seen that many pictures. It's like, this project is 68 two-bedroom apartments with all new utilities and blah, 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 and we're paying for it all. But, I mean, this is standard thing where it says we're doing full street improvements, we're paying for them or whatever.
Am I reading the room correctly that you would like revision?
Yes,
Yes.
Can we, Kylie?
I just want to make sure that I'm going, I didn't receive her email. And I'd like to look at it.
Can you shoot off?
Sure.
And I'll forward this to you electronically. Now I have it.
And so, and then we work together on these things right there. I'm hearing two separate conversations about, and Jeff is nodding. Jeff, why don't you summarize the conversations you're hearing? And because sometimes you do that better than me, if that's okay.
I think one is Anna's proposal to change it to require extra signs, and the other conversation is how to best manage the signs that we require developers to post.
Right. And so I don't think that we need to go back to the planning commission to talk about the second of those. I think we would need to go back to talk
Sorry,
about the
Jeff.
first. because it does involve, expanding, the potential, appeals that we would have, the people that would be entitled to notice and changing those procedures, which, as Garrett mentioned, is probably the opposite of what this legislation is trying to do. So we can figure out whether we're moving forward with option 1 or 2. I would appreciate that, just so I know what I'm working on.
Okay,
Okay, so we want some more revisions. What are we gonna do with this proposal now? Are we waiting for January for it to come back?
Well, this needs to be done by the end of the year at least.
Okay,
So if we could,
I
you know,
think
with
I've-
at least the part that we're ready to move forward on, and then we're gonna.
The cha-
Can we get clear direction that you want DCD to handle this sign? I think is one option, or the other option being that an expansion of what gets.
fine.
what
Yeah, the
gets
1 or the
signed.
2.
Yeah, so if council can provide clear direction on that, that'll determine what we have to do. But that being said, this law goes into effect January 1, so if we don't have something on the books.
so Jeff, and I mean, is it okay if Eric hasn't had a chance yet? Can I go ahead and?
Go ahead.
You did? Okay, Jeff, then.
Just go ahead.
I just wanted to read, just to make sure we're on the same page. This is the new language in the BMC, not verbatim, but it says the city.
Hold on. Point of order here.
On a sec.
Thank you.
So I want to make it clear. So the language in the packet is the city shall provide the sign along with instructions for posting the sign. Proof of posting such as a photo must be provided. It must be posted on the site. Must be posted concurrently with the review of development permits after staff determines adequate information is available. Must include at a minimum the permit number, duration of construction, site plan, elevations, and contact information. And must be installed per instructions provided by city staff. So
So what I was hearing is that people would prefer perhaps that DCD fill out the sign and then tell them where it needs to be posted conspicuously, and then provide DCD with a picture showing that it had been so conspicuously posted. And that way there's no,
If that's one,
I think that's how Port Orchard does it. The only reason I say that is driving around, the signs all have the same kind of thing. And so I'm guessing that it's someone on staff. that-
Right.
everywhere else.
Okay, so Jeff, and then, Eric, go ahead.
So I think that's the appropriate way to do it. That also provides uniformity. And the intention of this bill is to alleviate burdens on builders. And if the city knows what they want and you provide them the sign anyways, put the information on the darn sign and give it to them and tell them to plant it. And snap a picture, and email it back, and you're done. So it fulfills the intent of the legislation as well. So I'm thinking
That's one thing, though. There's two subject matters we're discussing. It's
Okay, so let's disaggregate them. So we've got that as a plan. So that's the one revision you're hearing from. Does everybody else agree on this one revision that Eric detailed?
I agree.
But DCD do the sign?
The DCD to sign, and it sounds like there's a code to mimic, right? The land use is.
That's a
similar.
little clarification.
Yes,
Does it actually need to be changed? Because what it says is that you'll follow the instructions that DCD provides you. So is the.
yeah, that means that they're creating the sign and all that, and we want uniformity.
And it says that,
well,
Yeah.
it does say the city shall provide the sign along with instructions.
that's,
With instructions.
Posted.
So now you're trusting them to do it.
But, well, the
well,
sign,
they,
No, the instructions.
they can do
is
as much,
you gotta
DCD can
locate-
do as much as it
on a
wants.
plan.
What I'm saying is it doesn't. We don't,
You're saying it's vague enough that would
Yeah.
work.
it's vague enough
talking
that
about internal policy.
DCD will come up with
Okay,
policy or procedures or whatever instructions that can be tweaked and changed because they handle it as like a memo or something.
So Garrett, if that would work, fine, but you understand the legislative intent that was just expressed tonight without a vote, so. All right, so you decide, going through the
Okay.
code, whether this meets the criteria of what you're hearing from your council, or if you need to tweak that language.
and I want to make sure we do have a general consensus that this is this is the direction we want to give rather than changing language that's vague enough, that the language is vague enough already. Are we good?
I'm good on that part.
Okay, all right, I know, I see you. So we have a second piece, that we're talking about. And Anna, are you gonna highlight the second piece right now for us? Second piece, please go.
So I found the language I was looking for, and the state permit is, and I quote, processing permit applications in a timely and fair manner. And I think that providing opportunity for public comment absolutely meets that additional requirement of being fair. And that's why I still like my proposal. I think every single statement that Eric made was accurate. And I understand Attorney Fennell's objection last September and again tonight that this might delay permitting. And I think that our obligation to our people who live here supersedes that. There, I'm all done.
Okay, so the second issue is that public comment has no bearing on, permit selection,
Type A,
Permit.
type ones.
permit.
That type one permits do not require a placard that says notice of proposed land use action.
Okay,
I'm proposing to change that to mimic the language in Paulsbo, which is any type one permit that has no or limited public impact, right? Like installing a new water heater or new windows, they don't need a placard.
and
But if you're building a new building, then you gotta have a placard.
and this is the change that you would not feel comfortable keeping from, like, that would need to go back to planning commission. Okay, council, do we have a general consensus to see this through, or is this something?
I think we need more notice, not less. Maybe it's not for one house, but certainly, I mean, if you don't have to do it until you're putting in 5 houses, there's lots big enough on my street that they could jam in 4 houses onto it. So we wouldn't get any notice as a neighborhood.
Eric?
So I'm suggesting we bifurcate this. We go with cleaning up number 2, if it needs cleaning up after legal and DCD reviews the language. And then the other one goes back to the planning commission.
Mhm.
'Cause I agree with you. I would like to have notice of whatever's going on instead of seeing the construction happening, going, what the hell is going on next door? I think everybody should know what's going on in the neighborhood, but that needs to go to the planning commission. So is that something that you only can do once a year? Is that what you're gonna tell me? Because there's all kinds of stuff at the planning commission on zoning. You only can do it once a year. So can we bifurcate it? I know I'm using big words. I learned that.
I'm
in
sure he
language.
knows.
It's possible, yes, but we'd like, one, get council consensus on what we should take to the planning commission, and 2, are you talking about increased informational signage or signage that would carry with it public notice and a chance to appeal?
That's what I'm saying, those are different things.
Right.
That's true, because they don't have a chance to appeal on a type 1. So what you're saying is, what's the point?
No, it's fine to let people know what's going on. It's a different issue to say that you have a right to comment and a right to appeal.
And so Anna's point is
You
that,
know, and
excuse me, so Anna's point is that she wants to see us have public notice with the right to appeal. Am I understanding that correct?
Public comment.
Public comment
Public
and
notice.
public comment with the right, which includes the right to appeal.
Yeah.
So that is what we're discussing now. Sorry to interrupt. Thanks, James.
Comment, apply right to appeal, or can it be comment without any right to appeal?
That's, I think, and Anna, if I'm correct in understanding, you believe that the public has the right to appeal. What's the point of public comment if it has no bearing? It's like a check the box, right? And I get that. So public comment, yeah, so I think that's what we're talking about here.
Appeal on
So-
what grounds? If it meets you're saying appeal because it doesn't meet the current provisions of the code that allows that use. Yeah, everybody should have the right to appeal.
mean, why are we issuing a permit that doesn't follow code?
Right.
Well, but that's my whole point. Sometimes humans make mistakes. Yeah. And it could be,
And I don't wanna make them tonight.
Right.
it could be that DCD, someone in planning is overworked and they do one too many stamps and they got it approved. Then all of a sudden, you've got something like, what the heck? Yeah, I got my permit. What are you gonna do about it?
Is there no path for that right now?
Well, you don't even know it's being
You
built
don't know
until
it's
the
being-
bulldozer's there clearing the ground. And do you really want that person that got the permit suffer undue financial stress when they find out, oh, I couldn't do that after all?
Garrett,
You can file an appeal and not have any real reason to do so. It could be frivolous just to add to process,
Yeah.
which would be a fear also, and
Yeah.
that you're now causing someone to potentially hire a legal team for something that they would otherwise be able to legally do outright,
That's true.
which adds time and cost to potentially any project in the city, which would be onerous.
Does that happen? How often does that happen?
We don't get many appeals, but we don't have the current permit process that we have now, limits appeals to permits that have public comment periods. If you're then expanding that out to any permit that we have essentially for any new construction,
So you're right, the public's got no say.
Is there a cost
But-
to appeal? What's the cost?
but also the public, okay, okay, so the public may have a bearing. If they do have public comment, then perhaps if the issue you're addressing, which is maybe the checks and balances, right? There's an opportunity for the public to be checks and balances and for somebody to take another look. Yeah.
I don't
I
think
know.
I can give you council direction on an honest.
So do I post it before the permit's approved?
Yeah, it should be when the permit is applied for.
Can we
Yeah.
move forward with what the planning commission's recommended? And then
Uh-huh.
can we look into strengthening this? or-
Let the planning commission.
Chief
That's what-
McGanny would like to, Chief McGanny wants to weigh in.
I just would like clarification. So we're saying that we want public comment on any application or any permit that basically has to do with anything
Land
semi-big.
use.
So if somebody wants to build a house that currently they don't have to have, but there's no way we could support that. I mean, the amount of public, every permit that would be applied for, we'd have to have a public comment. that
the
we-
amount of
we can't-
FTEs you
we can't
need to
support that.
respond to all of those public comments would be.
That would be,
Oh,
I don't know if you realize how many permits
Yeah.
that are going through.
no worries,
We've
but
got three-
how does Polsbo do it?
Well,
They
this
do.
is for type 2 and type 3 applications, and we're looking at their code.
You've got a lot of HOA.
Type 1, their code is,
Well, and that might be their current code, but everybody is having.
They just updated in 2024, so maybe they changed.
I hope they didn't come.
And I'd be happy to
It's type
contact
2 and
City of
type 3.
Paulsbo staff.
Type
and
2 and
decide
type 3.
this Separate process when we approach the planning commission.
But also, Polsbo does not have new amount of permit activity that we do.
Right.
In it, and I mean, I'm just gonna speak for the fire department. We have 3 people in the office, 2 of them are gonna be brand new. I have 1 person that's able to review permits right now. With that process, for all the fire stuff. So
Thank you.
if we had to go to public comment on
Yeah.
every permit, that would be.
I see what you're saying, and tonight before us is, how do we conform with the state law, which is to expedite permits and this, so, but,
unfair.
so, okay, but maybe that battle's for another day, but I do think that the item 2,
I think fair there, sorry, I think fair in this case is that the process for the applicant is fair.
Yeah, get the public.
Not that every swinging Richard could have a comment on some of this house color.
yeah, look at us swinging Richard up, but I
So.
understand.
I had to look that up.
No, I understand it,
Gentlemen.
but there's probably,
So
never mind.
my comment is, if this went and was approved by the planning commission in October, I don't understand why we're getting this at the last possible study session of the year in
Mhm.
order to get this passed.
Well, Garrett's been with us every week. Go ahead.
Not on
Garrett.
this.
I think you'll find a lot of other jurisdictions are in the same boat, passing it very late. We've been busy, with the comp plan update. Once again, these are updates that are required by the state. So do you just look up swinging Richard? Okay.
The first Google search is very interesting.
Can we keep-
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Okay, well, I'll say it for Denise, because if she's not up, it's like, we have this,
She's off, unfortunately. Her bandwidth is too low.
Okay.
you know, the hurry up and wait. And then move forward quickly. And it feels like there's a lot of things that council's asked to do. And I appreciate that you're busy. I get that, but how long ago did, well, that doesn't make any difference. When planning commission knew.
Shall we place this on consent or general business?
General
Public
General-
hearing. See that? He said, so here's the deal. So,
Yeah.
The only
there's a
difference
public
is hitting
hearing.
that gavel, that's the only difference.
Oh, yeah, there's a, so,
You had to have two
I
here.
just want to do a quick check, okay, because we have that second item still. I don't know that we have general consensus on it. In my opinion, and this is my 2 cents, it does make the permit process longer. But that's all I'll say about that. But let me go back to it. It's posting public notice, requesting public comment, and adding the ability for appeal. So it's a 3-layered thing. So where did we lose consensus? Let's go backwards. A public appeal. Do we have general consensus for that?
It depends on what they say.
So no, we don't have general consensus on that. So public,
We can't discriminate on the basis of it feels frivolous to me. It's an appeal, is
We-
an appeal, am I correct?
we,
Yeah, you can't just say no.
Yeah.
okay. So what do you mean you can't just say no?
You can't say no to appeals.
Yeah, you can't just.
No, she's asking you if you want the appeal language revised into this.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
So we do not have general consensus to add the appeal language into it. Let's talk about public comment. Do we want public comment on every type A permit? Type 1,
It's
I'm
not
sorry.
every
So to
type,
clarify
it's
for
ones that are
you-
of no or, it excludes those that are of no or limited public interest. Like building a house is of public interest.
They might change their code, I'm just not seeing it.
It's on page 2.
Do we have general consensus for public comment for these specific type 1?
Well, if you're gonna have a public comment, then you have the right to appeal. You can't have one without the other.
I was initially in support of this, but the cost, as it was explained to me, outweigh the benefits, and so I can no longer support. I don't support.
I'm not in support, but I'm wondering about the public notice. Jeff, wait, before we move.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Are you proposing amendments to what's currently before us or for future discussion?
I
Is that what
mean,
you're asking for?
You have to pass it. So it
Yeah.
has to be amended before we pass
So
it.
I like Michael's suggestion of if this, and I'm not comfortable putting any language in tonight regarding this proposal. I like it in general, but it needs to be fleshed out a lot more in terms of specifics and impact to staff. So is there,
well, it's public hearing, so then we're gonna discuss it after the public hearing and take action, correct?
well, I thought the proposal was to send that specific idea, just like, hey, we would like extra communication signage back to planning commission for the deep dive and for a recommendation that would work with staff.
We're no longer talking about the way that the signage is.
Not that, no, not the
Okay,
way the
okay.
signage.
You're talking about the additional requirement of,
Proposal.
yes.
Yeah.
Less, I think where we're at, and I don't know where Denise is at, which is hard, she's not here, but you're here. We kind of have, still, the 3 of us are not in consensus of the 2 items for public comment and public, or which would encompass the right to appeal, but my question is the posting of the signage for the specific types of housing, type 1, that she listed in her proposal for just the notice for public land use. Right? Am I understanding this issue? Go ahead, rephrase.
Personally, I love the concept of this. It needs a lot more detail work. So what I would say is they already have the direction to look at the language for the sign that's in here already. And then for Anna's proposal, if there's council direction that planning commission, when you do have bandwidth, please look at this in detail and come back with a suggestion on how to meet the intent of extra communication to the public regarding projects without putting a giant burden on staff.
But I think A9 is good as it. I think I'm good with A9 as it's written.
Yes.
With DCD knowing that what we've expressed can be written into their instructions for the applicant on how to move forward with the posting of the sign.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to respectfully pass on Anna's proposal today, but it would be nice for planning commission to review this and flesh it out a little bit more.
Can we say that as like a directive? Or, you know, like we
Can we direct?
We strongly urge you.
Okay, we strongly urge you, but however, this is a mayor's commission.
Can we just have this as something to look at when we do a retreat, as to like.
We got a lot of.
We can't
We
put,
got too much.
We have
for the
too much
retreat.
for.
And if
Yeah,
it
but-
has to go to planning, it has to go to
okay,
planning.
our folks, we'd have too much, as I was stating, for our retreat. We can we can send this to the planning commission at a future date and urge them to take a look at this, requesting, what we really are looking for is more notice to the public of what's happening with the land in the city of Orange. All right, I'm gonna, as it's written, A9, we're gonna have a public hearing on it. Okay, and then we'll have discussion and we'll take action on the same night. Is that correct? Jane, are you distracting Garrett again?
Planning commission
Okay,
told us to do. The planning commission unanimously recommends adoption of proposed zoning. Council should hold an open record public hearing, consider testimony, and adopt the proposed change. So it's like,
it's a recommendation. Do you not like the language?
I don't like the rest.
Okay. I mean, they're not directing. I mean, it is, I totally understand because we're here at the 9th hour.
Staff wrote that. Not like
Yeah.
the planning commission spent a lot of time crafting
8th
that
hour,
paragraph.
9th hour? Either way, it's the 8th hour, technically, it's 8:10. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We appreciate you and your fantastic holiday sweaters. You really bring it every year,
Thank you
man.
for this. Right?
The sweater made the presentation.
All right. Next up, Director Riley is here.